This is a painting of one of the many strange worlds of Zdzislaw Beksinski, a Polish artist whose paintings are unlike anything else you've ever seen. Disturbing and captivating in equal measure, he had a unique ability to create something that looked straight out of your nightmares. Born in 1929 in the Polish town of Senok, his birth coincided with a period of immense change for Europe. Poland's mid-20th century was full of political and social unrest. The wounds of World War I were still raw, and the grip of Soviet control was tight on the country. While the details of his early life remain somewhat shrouded, the shadows of a turbulent and war-ridden world would undoubtedly have an extensive influence on his artistic tastes. He opted originally to study architecture at the Krakow University of Technology and graduated in 1947. Though this major is seemingly far removed from the dark surrealism that would define him in his later works, the influence of his years as an architect are still visible in many of his pieces, where he crafts large and impossibly detailed structures. For the first few years of his adult life, Beksinski worked in construction and as a bus designer for an automotive firm. In the 1950s, he began exploring photography, creating surreal and dark images. One famous photo, Sadist's Corset, hinted at his interest in disturbing and nightmarish themes. And by the 1960s, he began to feel that photography limited his ability to express his artistic vision. He craved more creative freedom, a way to photograph dreams, as he put it. Briefly trying sculpture, he ultimately found painting to be the perfect medium, and he would quickly find early success as a painter, which led him to quitting his bus job in 1967 and allowed him to focus solely on his art. The early 1970s saw a radical transformation in Beksinski's style. Beksinski chose to reject the optimistic themes and bright colors that were seen as the standard for the time, venturing into a territory far darker and more unsettling. This new direction, which he dubbed himself his Baroque period, was characterized by a bleak and desolate aesthetic. His canvases became populated by skeletal figures, often elongated and contorted, their expressions etched with anguish and despair. The landscapes and backgrounds mirrored this sense of desolation, barren wastelands bathed in an oppressive red or ochre light. Paintings like Large Space with a Cross show the first shift to a style truly his own. Here, a skeletal figure with outstretched arms dominates the foreground, dwarfed by a vast, empty space that evokes a sense of profound loneliness in the viewer. Beksinski's fascination with the grotesque and macabre would only grow from here, as he began to incorporate disturbing imagery, decaying flesh, monstrous creatures, and scenes of violence into his work. Paintings like this one from 1969 better showcase his interest in melancholy themes than his earlier works. It depicts a large ballerina humanoid figure with sewed-together skin and a disfigured face. Dark and muted colors dominate this piece, and the figure itself looks to be straight out of a nightmare. Perhaps Beksinski meant to draw parallels to body dysmorphia with this painting, or perhaps he simply meant to disturb and unease the viewer. Either way, it is here that Beksinski begins to get the hang of the dark and disturbing signature style that he would be known for in the future. While the darkness that permeated Beksinski's work might seem somewhat overwhelming at first glance, there's an undeniable beauty to it as well. His masterful use of light and shadow creates a sense of depth and mystery, drawing the viewer into these unsettling yet strangely captivating worlds. There's also a strange and haunting sense of humanity in his work, even amidst the grotesque imagery. The anguished figures seem to embody the depths of human suffering and existential dread, emotions that resonate deeply with the viewer, and themes that were no doubt influenced heavily by the troubled world of his own childhood. The shift towards the dark and grotesque wasn't only a stylistic choice, it was a reflection of Beksinski's own internal struggles. The personal tragedy he endured, coupled with the oppressive atmosphere of Cold War Poland. His art became a way to grapple with these dark emotions, to confront the absurdity and suffering inherent in the human condition. The Baroque period marked the birth of Beksinski's signature style that continues to intrigue and sicken to this very day. Primarily created with oil and charcoal, Beksinski's works are unsettling and often depict apocalyptic landscapes populated by distorted figures. Though mostly untitled, some have taken on unofficial names over the years, a few of which I'll use today. A common theme in his work is a sense of alienation, despair, and death, conveyed through these desolate landscapes and tormented figures that inhabit them. This 1973 piece depicts a chariot walking on two skeletal legs, carrying two nightmarish humanoid figures across an eerily red jungle landscape. The foreground draws you in, with their strange and inhuman faces, but it's the details in the background, which includes another figure hunched and riding a giant bird-like creature behind them, that really makes this work so interesting. It's hard to tell if this piece is meant to be taken as some sort of chase scene, where the strange creature in the background is chasing the two in the foreground, or maybe if it's a parting of ways, the strange poor creature in the background is left alone to fend for himself by the two humanoids that are leaving. But no matter what it's truly meant to depict, one thing is for certain: this painting is incredibly uncomfortable to look at. And as we dive deeper and deeper into Beksinski's work, you'll begin to realize that this feeling of uncomfort is certainly common. Another recurring theme in Beksinski's work is the objectification of his subjects. Their forms and presumed functions seem dictated by the oppressive environments they inhabit. This evokes a sense of pity for these beings, and in this, we can see a glimpse of how Beksinski himself likely felt about his own environment and the world around him in general. A notable example is his 1970s painting, Crawling Death, one of his most famous. This 1973 artwork presents a visceral encounter with mortality. Occupying the canvas's central space is a terrifying, bony creature, something resembling a monstrous spider. Its malnourished legs bend unnaturally as it crawls relentlessly forward. I believe that this strange and warped figure represents death. I think the painting tries to force the viewer to confront the inevitability of death, and the fact that no matter how slowly, it is always getting closer to you, even if crawling. The fear of death is a universal human concern, and it's brought to life through the grotesque but beautiful embodiment in this painting. Beyond just the creature's menacing form, the details further amplify the scene's dramatic impact. The white bandages wrapped around its head, stained a crimson red, hint at a past of struggle or injury, and a desire perhaps to disguise its identity. This imagery conveys not only the creature's own suffering, but also the pain and struggle often associated with death itself. Crawling Death intertwines themes of self-hatred, death, fear, and loneliness all at once, and personally, it's one of my favorite works in this video. Another example, this time from 1975, depicts a monstrous skeletal figure following a ghostly child through a hellish coastal landscape. whilst another crow-like figure rides a monstrous bony horse menacingly in the background. The expressionless faces and ominous nature of these figures following a child perhaps hints at the emotional baggage of Beksinski's own childhood and the demons that now follow him from it. Despite the unnerving nature of the painting, its beauty is undeniable, and you become almost lost in its landscape. And the strange looming figures seem to be, at the very least, trying to guide the child to safety. It's an interesting piece that I think would be even more interesting if we only knew a little bit more about the early life of Beksinski himself. Maybe if we had more details about his experiences as a boy, we could extract some deeper themes or meanings here. Still though, even with that being said, the painting is a beautiful image about childhood trauma and the burden that we carry after receiving it. Beksinski didn't slow down, even in his later life. His 2004 work titled S4 is a captivating exploration of transformation and the unsettling fusion of nature and humanity. And again, this painting offers something we haven't ever seen for Beksinski. This time, even though still melancholic, it seems to be just a little bit more hopeful. Beksinski never abandoned his dark style, although as his life went on, it seems like he finally began to feel a bit more at peace in the world, and the underlying themes of his paintings slowly become a tiny bit less melancholic. While the title of this work itself offers little in the way of explanation, the painting invites the viewer on a journey of interpretation through its hauntingly beautiful imagery. The foreground of the painting depicts a rocky terrain, its jagged edges and muted tones creating a sense of desolation. However, this seemingly inanimate rock begins to morph into something living. Parts of it appear to smoothen and soften out, taking a fleshy texture. This metamorphosis continues as the rock seamlessly blends into a group of faceless beings. These figures could represent the interconnectedness of all living things, a subtle reminder that even the most seemingly inanimate objects share a primal connection with humanity. Alternatively, they might symbolize the creeping presence of humanity encroaching upon and ultimately consuming nature. Or perhaps the transformation depicted could represent the human condition, where we are constantly in flux, transitioning from one state of being to another. Whatever the case, his later years were a stark contrast to the early surrealist works for which he received recognition. While the darkness that pervades his art is often emphasized, a deeper look into the final chapter of Beksinski's life reveals a man who, although was a pessimist, seemed to finally be somewhat okay with the world around him. And themes of grappling with trauma and the loss of loved ones are still pervade through this work, but it's nice to see that as his life went on, he seems to have found some semblance of peace. At least he was doing better. Unfortunately, however, the late 90s would end up to be a period of crushing blows for Beksinski. In 1998, he lost his wife, Zofia, to cancer. Zofia acted as a rock for Beksinski, managing their life's rhythm and allowing him the space to create his works freely. Her absence left a gaping hole in his world, a loss that friends described as plunging him into a state of emotional adriftness. Just 1 year later, his son, Tamaz, a respected translator and popular music journalist, committed suicide. This second tragedy plunged Beksinski into a desolation that seemed to mirror the barren landscapes of his work. The playful and humorous personality that he was known for amongst close friends seemed to vanish, replaced by a deep depression that shadowed his remaining days. Despite that personal darkness that engulfed him, Beksinski always continued to express himself through his art. And with the turn of the century, Beksinski would turn to digital tools, a new frontier for his already unique style. His signature dystopian landscapes and grotesque figures found a new translation on the computer screen. This period also saw a renewed interest internationally in his work, with exhibitions garnering attention beyond Polish borders. However, Beksinski preferred to remain a private figure, content to let his paintings speak for themselves. He shunned interviews and public appearances, preferring the solitude of his Warsaw apartment instead, his only companions being his art supplies, his beloved Persian cat, and the ghosts of his memories. A solitary routine became Beksinski's new anchor. Days revolved solely around creating art, finding solace in the act of translating his emotional turmoil onto the canvas. The stark dichotomy between his personal despair and the meticulous detail with which he rendered his visions remains an enduring testament to the artist's extreme resilience. The tragic end came on February the 21st, 2005. Beksinski was found murdered in his apartment, stabbed 17 times. The perpetrator was Robert Kupiec, the teenage son of his longtime caretaker. Reports at the time suggested that Kupiec had been refused a loan by Beksinski, leading to a violent confrontation. This single act of violence robbed the world of a unique artistic voice forever. News of Beksinski's murder sent shockwaves through the artistic world. His death was seen as the brutal silencing of a creative genius. The extreme contrast between the beauty and complexity of his paintings and his violent manner of death fueled a renewed interest in his work and life. In the years that followed, more exhibitions showcased Beksinski's work, and his paintings became highly sought after by collectors. To fully understand Beksinski's story, we must acknowledge the duality that existed within him. The darkness that permeated his art was a reflection of the personal struggles he endured. Yet despite the tragedies that befell him, he continued to create. Zdzislaw Beksinski's legacy transcends the haunting beauty of his dystopian dreamscapes. His artistic impact continues to resonate in the world even today. His influence can be seen in many heavy metal aesthetics, and many artists who would take inspiration from his signature muted color style. Beksinski's legacy goes beyond just art. His story offers a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Despite battling personal demons and facing unimaginable loss, he continued to express himself through art until the very bitter end. Zdzislaw Beksinski's legacy is a complex tapestry woven from an artistic genius, personal tragedy, and enduring influence. His paintings continue even today to challenge and inspire, serving as a reminder of the power of art to confront darkness and translate it into something hauntingly beautiful. During today's video, we've analyzed quite a bit of art and explored quite a few unique and beautiful worlds, delving into the human spirit, the inevitability of death, and the inherent beauty that can be found in even the most terrifying situations. A big thank you to all of you who have made it this far for joining me on this exploration of Beksinski's legacy. And if I missed any pieces that you would like to share in the comments, I would be more than happy to explore some more of his nightmarish work in my free time. And as always, until next time, good luck sleeping.